What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. Honestly, I wanted to do this for a while. You could say the same for a bunch of ideas I got, but I'm glad I laid this because for one, had I made it earlier on, it wouldn't have been as good, as I really like this storyline and I want to cover the entire thing the right way. You know what I mean? They went full on insane with The Undertaker. He was really in his element during this time. You might hate it himself, but to me it was one of his most memorable runs. He was essentially believing in everything he's saying, claiming this was all for a higher power he answers to, with some crazy stuff, and I don't think we will ever see something like it. So how did the ministry start? Well, in October of 1998, The Undertaker realigned himself with Paul Bearer, turning heel for the first time in 6.5 years. He promised to unleash his Ministry of Darkness onto the World Wrestling Federation, and there was a bunch of mentions of this stuff over the next couple of weeks, and Taker was slowly transitioning into this evil character. He tried embalming Austin, burying him alive, and even crucified him. I'm not an Attitude Era kid, obviously, but I remember there was a certain episode where I believe it was the 15th anniversary. They just showed this video with this package, and I was mind blown. I was like, what the hell is going on here? I had to search for it, and I couldn't find it for months until I eventually did. Yeah, it's just a cool moment to look at. A bunch of people were very angry, religious groups, parents, they were very frustrated and angry with what WWF was putting out at the time, and I believe this was the reason they went TV-14, because before this, WWF was actually PG. The entire time it was PG. All the stuff you were seeing in 1998 was PG, and this is the one thing that caused them to go TV-14. It's just crazy to think about. But yeah, this moment, it belongs in the top 20 Raw moments for sure. Definitely. It set the stage for The Undertaker's ministry. This basically showed what he's all about, this new character of his. Taker really didn't have minions, they were just mentioned at this point, and the metamorphosis into this whole new character would be cemented when Stone Cold buried him alive. Up to the point where Taker announced the ministry into a buried alive match, there was just these mentions, you're helpless against my ministry or whatever, the symbol was appearing, it was slowly coming, you know what I mean? In his time away, Taker grew this beard that really, and I mean really, added to this incarnation of his. Normal Taker was menacing, but this was totally different. As for how the ministry officially began, here we go. Heading into 1999, a couple of strange things were occurring in the World Wrestling Federation. First of all, the Acolytes, who were already strange enough with a Jackal, well, they were talking some stuff. Jackal ended up getting released, and so we never knew what their allegiance to the Jackal was all about, but there was a place waiting for them in the Undertaker's ministry. Then, well, they decided, you know what, let's go after Dennis Knight. So one night, they managed to commandeer his vehicle and attack him before tossing him into the trunk. Why was this happening? Well, earlier in the night, Knight was chatting with X-Pac and said he wanted me to be here. The following week, he was discovered all chained up, shouting for help, and later on, the Acolytes re-entered the room, dungeon, or whatever, and informed Mr. Knight that he's ready for you. He was shouting, he's like, no! And then they threw him into some room. I don't know what the hell that was. Probably hell itself. That's what they were probably implying. But if you thought that was crazy, well, you ain't seen nothing yet. On the January 11th, 1999 episode of Raw, a ceremony of sorts was prepared for Dennis Knight. The Acolytes were there, Druids also, and out he came, The Undertaker. Updated look and all, Paul Bearer had dark hair this time around, and then he mentioned the Buried Alive match and how they failed to get rid of him. And if anything, he's more powerful now. He said that this was the plague of darkness that he was talking about, how he's the reaper of men, chaser of souls, the weaver of nightmares, the purity of evil, and then he stood up and spoke in tongue. He recited some sort of passage and then cut himself. He dropped the blood into this glass. Austin chants intensified, and Taker informed Dennis Knight that he's no longer Dennis Knight. He's Midian, and he drank some of that blood. Then he split open his chest, drawing his symbol. And the Attitude Era was basically the Wild West. They could do whatever the hell they wanted. And add to that, Michael Cole shouting, oh my god, he's levitating. Bro, can't you see? Then he set fire ablaze onto one of his symbols, and I don't know what to say about this. It was totally out there. The commentary team were at a complete loss of words. They had never seen anything like that. I mean, if you go watch the segment, you might be disturbed a little. From here on, Midian began carrying an eye. I don't know why. And the next week, he was all happy talking about something and suggested Jerry Lawler and Michael Cole tune in. The Undertaker once again spoke about people and how the world is filled with polluted souls. He claimed Midian can see what they cannot, and Knights may have ceased to exist, but Midian was given an everlasting life. And worst of all, this wasn't it for the initiations, because January 24th will be the day the next sacrificial lamb will be slaughtered. You know what that night was? Royal Rumble, of course. So, during the night, he ends up going after Mabel. The ministry whooped his ass and tossed him into this hearse. And the following night, they made their mark by attacking Road Dogg and Al Snow. And yes, Mabel was now an official member of the Ministry of Darkness. The Undertaker was claiming that this will be a holy war, and honestly, that can mean just about anything. The ministry weren't done scouting potential new members for the group. The February 1st episode of Raw was supposed to be The Undertaker's first match back when he was set to team up with Midi and Viscera to face The Brood, but he had other plans. By the sounds of it, The Brood were pretty over, and the match quickly went south when the rest of the Ministry got involved. One thing to note, however, was the fact that The Brood assaulted the refs to prevent any kind of help, protection. It was just confusing. And then the Ministry continued the attack. Things got worse for them when the Acolytes decided, let's tie a noose onto Gangrel's head, and they choked him out. As a matter of fact, he said in an interview that he was almost gonna die, but luckily, Midian saved him at that point. A couple of minutes later, the Acolytes go out to the ring to face Road Dogg and Al Snow. The match was wild, I don't need to say it. Viscera helped a bit, and then right after the match, a couple of Druids come in, jump the guys before the Undertaker once again appeared. The Acolytes removed the hoods, and it was the Brood. So it was an initiation. The Ministry is slowly getting the WWF's attention, and McMahon didn't outright mention them or anything like that, but a match between Midian and the Big Boss Man was made for St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Anyways, Boss Man won this bout, and right afterwards, the Ministry surrounded him. They attacked, and Taker slowly walked down to the ring. Viscera hit 3 splashes on the Corporation's finest before dragging him to the back. So the next night on the War Zone, the Ministry come out, and Taker once again spoke about his plans. Paul Bearer, for the first time in a long time, actually spoke and suggested that Mr. McMahon listen, because it's not very often he speaks. The Undertaker then claimed that the World Wrestling Federation will be his. It was totally out there. And the reason why he took out Boss Man was to warn Vince that they can take anybody at any time he desires. He also said that he owns the key to Vince McMahon's heart and soul. And while he was busy with petty dealings, Stone Cold, he's actually built an army, and they've taken the power of someone far greater. Basically, what The Undertaker was trying to say is that he's gonna own the World Wrestling Federation, and he was working for a higher power. Who was that at this point? I don't know. I was looking at the dirt sheets, Meltzer Wrestling Observer, and they believed it was Linda McMahon. They thought it was going to be Linda McMahon, and then McMahon's, Shane and Vince were going to feud with her. That's what they believed. And honestly, that might have gone down better than what we got. Anyways, the Boss Man didn't take these statements lightly. He challenged the Dead Man to a 6-man tag and threatened to stick his foot in his ass. Leader of the Ministry, however, warned him to be very careful what he wishes for. Later in the night, the match goes down. It's like every early 99 Raw episode. Brawling for 1 minute before a real match. It eventually gets thrown out the window, and this time, The Undertaker and the Brood appeared. The rest of the Ministry refrained from fighting because, they had Shane McMahon. Standoff on the ramp while Taker delivered some stern words to the new European champ. Shane was getting choked out. He's struggling to breathe, and Taker handed him an envelope for his father. What was in that envelope? Well, fast forward to Sunday Night Heat. McMahon finally responds to The Undertaker. He thought it was a very ambitious plan for Taker to claim that he's gonna own the company. As for what's in that envelope, Vince warned Undertaker not to go there. Back off. He responded to this threat by booking him in a match against his own brother, Kane, in an Inferno match on Raw's War. He said that the hell that The Undertaker knows will be heaven compared to what goes down on Monday. Poor Kane, he's always forced into these uncomfortable situations. At the end of the night, the Boss Man faced yet another Ministry member, Viscera. Why am I mentioning this? Because of this cool-ass ending. So the Corporation come down to the ring and jump Viscera when the Ministry make an appearance. The Undertaker said that he may burn in hell, but McMahon will be coming with him. Look at that visual. So McMahon's like, don't you go there. Like, that's gonna scare him. Just look at him. I mean, they probably should have gotten a hold of a cucumber or something. Maybe that would have helped. Maybe, but it's doubtful. At the same time, The Undertaker was asserting his power. He was disciplining members of the Brood for losing, showing that if you get out of line, translation, lose a match, you're gonna get it. The Undertaker felt that McMahon wasn't taking his threat seriously, and so he was gonna show it by bringing him a surprise at the end of the night. From the boss's perspective, if he chops the head off, what's left of the Ministry? It was a good idea on paper. Also, just to mention, this was the first televised match for The Undertaker since Rock Bottom in Your House. McMahon sat down and provided some insight into what will go down and everything that he was talking about, what did happen. First of all, Paul Bearer delivered a little gift to the chairman that brought him down to his knees. The mysterious gift left him speechless, and it was a teddy bear. The teddy bear got him crying, tears were streaming down his eyes, and poor Kane was on fire yet again. Man. The Undertaker then approached Vince and set the bear on fire as the owner tearfully shouted, "No," as Raw went off the air. Once again on Heat, the Dead Man sent yet another message to the owner of the company and promised something for Raw. So Vince responds to this by putting another roadblock ahead of the Undertaker, that being Mankind. If Mankind wins, he gets to officiate the WrestleMania main event. The reason why he was doing this was because he knew about Mankind's victories against the Dead Man in the past and felt he could do some damage to him. McMahon also promised a surprise for The Undertaker. Now, what would that be? Well, it was Hell in a Cell against Big Boss Man at WrestleMania 15. That wasn't even it, though. Anyways, later that night, Vince once again sat down at commentary to watch Taker and Mankind. During the match, The Undertaker set his sights on Vince, and just look at that. Boom. Turns around, punches him. At the same time, he got counted out, but I doubt there was a care in the world for him. He strikes, looks for a chokeslam on top of the table when the boss man comes to the rescue, and along with Vince, he runs into the crowd. Brood and acolytes follow along, and damn, I don't think you want to piss off that guy. Mankind's all happy in the ring, but takes a chokeslam. Now, the problem with this was the fact that Boss Man basically got the attention of The Undertaker, because on Heat, the acolytes tried getting a hold of him, but were unsuccessful, and things were looking dire for the corrections officer, because on Raw the next night, The Undertaker had a search and destroy rule hanging over him. It seemed like he was losing his patience with him, interrupting matches. McMahon took notice of this and told Briscoe and Patterson to keep an eye on the ministry. They were dressed in some goofy outfits, and Briscoe thought he could take them down. Turns out he was delusional. Once they opened the door, the Godfather whooped their asses. Just wanted to mention that. Later that night, the boss man finally arrived. He wasn't afraid of The Undertaker, but that quickly changed when the rest of the ministry jumped in. That's it, they got him. After the commercial break, there he was. They dragged him out for yet another sacrifice. Taker was saying one by one the corporation will fall till there was only one, and then she too will be his. Who was she? Nobody knew at this point. Boss Man, though, managed to break free from the symbol, and luckily for himself, the corporation made the save. Hell, even The Rock came out wearing Versace. He tried to make an effort to save him. Things got worse, though, when the police ran in there, and Taker didn't mind beating them up. For odd reasons, the rest of the ministry didn't make an effort to fight them. Yeah, that was confusing. And before he surrendered, Taker set the symbol on fire right as Paul Bear received a phone call. Who was that? I don't know, Vince Russo or somebody. Afterwards, as Taker's being loaded into the car, McMahon delivered some stern words warning him of what's to come. He's like, you threaten me, you threaten my corporation, you threaten my family. You better stay in jail, because if you don't, I'm going to get you when you get out. So now that Taker's gone to jail, he wasn't planning on appearing on Raw. He's going to go someplace else to stick it to McMahon. On the March 15th, 1999 episode of Raw, Vince McMahon provided commentary for his son's match with a faux Legion of Doom. He wins the match, but that's not the point. So along with his father, they're slowly walking up to the back when a familiar voice calls for Vince. Not only that, but he was at a familiar place, which was Mr. McMahon's own damn house. And The Undertaker was waiting for her. They frantically called the police, who thought it was a publicity stunt. They ended up going. Now, just to mention, they were thousands of miles away from home. A couple of minutes later, The Undertaker's on the phone. He's literally asking the boss of the company, like, it's 10 o'clock, where's your family? Anyways, Midian, the only ministry member in the arena, was punished in a cage match, or special terms, a hard times match. The corporation assaulted him, but he was more than likely willing to take the beating. McMahon was trying to threaten Taker by having the corporation go after Midian, but the guys in Connecticut wouldn't budge. He didn't realize that they'd literally die for The Undertaker. Right as the segment concluded, a car arrived at the McMahon house. They tried calling, no answer, and once the officer did arrive at the house, nobody was there. This didn't mean they were gone, though. The Undertaker was still waiting for her, and meanwhile in the arena, Triple H was calling out Kane. He ended up brawling with him, and McMahon came out to get some much-needed help. He felt Kane was the only one that could talk to him, but he unmasked, and no, it wasn't Kane, it was him. He told McMahon that it's simple, anytime, anywhere. So at this point, The Undertaker had yet to get it. The corporation, on the other hand, had some glaring issues that the ministry took advantage of. So The Rock was out here insulting everybody in sight, including the boss man, and this led to a main event match between the guys on Heat. Kevin Kelly was asking Shane who she was, and he refused to answer. Anyways, they actually had a fight, but then the ministry came out. Rock was too selfish to do anything about it and walked to the back, but his pathway was blocked because The Undertaker appeared. Big Show tried to come out to his aid, but it was a bit awestruck with The Undertaker, and yeah, that's the segment. Also, what in the hell was this JR storyline? I mean, I get what the hell it was, but why in the hell did they do it? The final rally for WrestleMania saw a little brawl between the Acolytes and Taker and the corporation. That's all. And then when Taker's punches fast, and that was the build-up to the match. The Undertaker had yet to show any vulnerability. He was unstoppable. Boss Man was just a stopgap in his eyes. The Undertaker was persistent. He was hard-headed. He was going to remain on the course until he gets what he wants, and that's to own the entire company. On Heat, an hour before WrestleMania 15, Michael Cole interviewed the Boss Man when the lights went out and Taker took over the speakers once again. He said that Boss Man will come face-to-face with an entire movement of darkness, and he will be his personal escort through the one-way trip. Then the Brood struck. Their music's playing, some random voices, and once the lights were back on, Big Boss Man was a victim of a Brood bloodbath. Hell in a Cell, we meet again. Basically, McMahon felt Boss Man was the right choice to roughen up the Undertaker, and looking at this story, I can't believe I thought the ministry were babyfaces as a kid. I was an idiot, because I thought the crowd were cheering him, they liked him or something. Anyways, the Undertaker had a remix version of his 1998 theme song. He had a totally different look. He was scary looking. I mean, if I was Boss Man, I'd be pissing myself. Just the thought of being stuck with that guy in that cage, oh man. The match itself, it was plotting, boring, and the fact that it was at WrestleMania didn't help. I mean, back then, Hell in a Cell was supposed to be hellacious. yeah, it was just too much to follow, you know? But shockingly, it isn't the worst cell match ever. I mean, it was a couple of years ago the worst in my eyes. Hey, that's my opinion. Anyways, Taker won to go 9-0. And right after the match, the Brood descended from the rafters. They looked like a bunch of toys, and they brought down a noose for the Undertaker to use to hang the big boss man. Like, what? I don't know what to make out of this, seriously. Like, what the hell is going on? Who literally pitched this in the back and was like, yeah, we should have boss man getting hung on live TV on pay-per-view? I don't know what to say. I don't know what to make out of this. The Brood gets stuck in the air for a bit. Boss Man's hanging. Paul Bear was lifting a cell, I should know. And just something about this felt uncomfortable. Was it because Boss Man's dead? I'm not sure. But just something while making this video again and seeing it, something was off. And also, I gotta ask you guys one question. Is this symbolic? Is this symbolic? Oh, shut up, man. Anyways, the next night on Raw's War saw the official debut of Stephanie McMahon. She did appear on TV beforehand, but that wasn't official. Just wanted to know. So first of all, the ministry interrupted whatever Sable was doing to come out to the ring. The Undertaker was ready to choke slam her to hell and threatened to do so if Vince didn't come out. McMahon told his kids to stay put and he went out to the arena. So he asked the Phenom, what kind of a man are you? But then he realized something. The acolytes weren't there and he ran back shouting for Stephanie and she was gone. Shane had no idea what happened and decided to call the police, but Vince knew what Taker was capable of. I mean, Exhibit A, WrestleMania 15. Shane couldn't find her and was very remorseful, and all of a sudden the phone rings and yes, it was him. Taker was taunting him, you know, saying stuff like, she is sugar and spice and everything nice. And since she was nowhere to be found, Vince sent Ken Shamrock to search for his daughter. Shortly afterwards, Ken Shamrock faced Gangrel in the ministry, and he promised to get an answer out of him. And about the match, Shamrock beat him from pillar to post. He was really trying to force the answer out of him as to where Stephanie is, but before he can attempt to do so, the rest of the Brood came on and gave him a bloodbath. This time around, though, it was a bloodbath gone wrong. Christian was caught and he quickly confessed. Oh, she's in the basement. A couple of minutes later, there she is and mission complete. And in other news, Big Boss Man made a miraculous return after 7 days. See, why can't this guy turn into a babyface? He was too much of a man, you know, to sit down at home after getting hung at WrestleMania. Just look at him. As for Vince and Stephanie, they were interviewed by Jerry Lawler on Heat. This interview is notable for the whole he literally believes in his character or whatever thing. Vince revealed that the envelope contained some very candid images of Stephanie. And as for the teddy bear, she really loved that teddy bear and she was very uncomfortable discussing the stuff. McMahon felt that Taker has become this creature. He's believing in this character. Like he was believing everything that he was saying. Not only that, but the others believed it as well. Jerry Lawler then asked him, like, you created The Undertaker, what's up? It was strange to the boss and it was far, far away from business. You know, it was personal at this point. Stephanie was talking about how she feels safest with her father and he was ready to hurt somebody. And yeah, that's the segment. Now, a bunch believe this was something Vince Russo came up with because if you don't know, the guy really loves shoot interviews and whatnot. And yeah, that's what I gotta say. The next night on Raw, Stephanie was once again there. Shane was causing a ruckus with how things were going. He took over the show and the ministry ended up coming out to the ring once again later that night because The Undertaker promised a sacrifice. Not any sacrifice. The one beautiful woman will be taken away from her family and she will accept him as her savior. And while Vince would do anything to prevent this, he knows there's not a damn thing he can do about it. Meanwhile, Christian received a lashing for revealing Stephanie's whereabouts, and things would look gloomy for himself when he lost a tag match that he wasn't even involved in. Later in the night, Ken Shamrock faced Viscera, and things did look good for him initially, but the rest of the ministry ran down there and jumped him. It was damaged goods at this point, and they abducted him. The reasons were unknown, but they would become apparent later. The corporation did want to do something about it, but Shane believed it was a trap. He mentioned Boss Man's neck as a reason to not go out there, and Shamrock was tossed into a trunk. The rest of the ministry plotted, and the lights in McMahon's room were flickering, and then they completely went out, and after the commercial break, it was time for the sacrifice. Ominous music played, and everybody was under the belief that it happened. The Undertaker came out and said that Vince will be held responsible for this, and oh, there she is. The woman on the symbol was not Stephanie McMahon, it was actually Ryan Shamrock. Taker thought of her as a replacement for now, and he was going to get Stephanie eventually, but this will do from now. Stephanie was watching in complete fear. The symbol was raised, Taker was speaking in tongues, and she was screaming, and then there was this legendary moment. You stay away from Stephanie. Bunch used to think that was about Randy Savage. I wonder why. Ken Shamrock was of course missing, and he couldn't do anything about it, but on Heat, he did do something. He whooped Midian's ass, and one thing to note is that Ryan was nowhere to be found at this point. The ministry had her, Shamrock went berserk, and he sent a message to The Undertaker saying that he's going to be at Raw in Detroit, and asked him, like, I'm willing to die for my sister, are you? You know, during this segment, I was too busy paying attention to the crowd. They were making fun of him or something. Yeah, Shamrock was slowly turning to a babyface. Vince wasn't really thinking of business. Shane was doing a whole lot of things and he was starting to get a big head. As a matter of fact, his father tried to lecture him on respect, to which Shane responded, "Respect this," and boom, he slaps him. Such a memorable moment. One of the most memorable moments from 1999 for sure. As for The Undertaker, he said that it was a matter of time before his daughter, Vince's daughter, Stephanie, will be his. But tonight, another innocent victim will be sacrificed, and once again, you know who's going to be held responsible? Yep, Vince was. Meanwhile, the Brood were set to face the Big Show in a handicap match, and I should note they received a very positive reception from the crowd. Right when the match was about to begin, The Undertaker felt Christian had to prove his worth, and so Edge and Gangrel, well, they were forced to leave or else, you know, they were going to pay. Christian got in 0 offense and the Big Show won, and this meant a gloomy future was in store for Christian. Once again, a couple of minutes later, the Ministry made their mark. They attacked Jarrett and Owen Hart for obvious reasons, you know, a sacrifice. And once again, he grabbed a hold of a woman and blamed Vince. He told Deborah that she's going to have to do for tonight, and then all of a sudden the crowd cheers, and out comes Ken Shamrock with a ball bat. The Undertaker, though, stood his ground, and he ended up giving the location for his sister Ryan, which JR thought was ironic because, well, Christian did that and he got punished. Ministry tried to confiscate the bat, but were unsuccessful, and he ran to the boiler room, but Taker warned him to be very careful. A couple of minutes later, Shamrock finds his sister with Mankind when they hear somebody entering the boiler room, and I just wonder, oh, who is it? Shamrock wasn't exactly the sharpest knife in the drawer. You know, he doesn't really think things through in kayfabe, and so he got his ass beat. Mankind too. But they didn't give a damn about him. They cared about Shamrock. The commentary team were mentioning how Taker's brought this persona to life. The Undertaker called Ryan a slut and held her responsible for what's to happen to her brother. And so, what I can take away from this was the fact that Taker wanted Shamrock in the Ministry. He was talking about how he's got to suffer pain and then he's going to join or whatnot. That's what I took away from this. After the commercial break, he was brought out for yet another sacrifice. So the Brood are tying him up, doing the work when the Undertaker grabbed Christian and demanded they tie him to the symbol. Viscera tries to grab a hold of Christian and he's like, "No, you two put him on the symbol." And he was obviously referring to the Brood. They refused to do so, and so a punishment was looming by the looks of it. But they decided, you know what, screw it, and they attacked. The crowd cheered for them. Shamrock was untying himself in the midst of all this chaos. Mankind comes out. The crowd's loud at this point. Vampires were flying. Foley chants, and the Undertaker slowly descended away. And honestly, this is my favorite Ministry segment. Just chaos occurring. The Brood breaking free. I loved it. And the Taker, the one who caused all the chaos, who was deserving of the beating, runs away. At the end of the night, Shamrock, the dumbass, came out and called out the Undertaker. He talked about how Taker always slipped out the back door and actually referred to him by his real name, Mark. He told him to come out to end this thing right here and right now, and then he says, "It's about time you're brought down to reality." I don't know what the hell that meant. Let's go on. Taker responds, and Undertaker's unstoppable. Luckily, though, he managed to counter. The crowd was loving it, and it was a very long time since Taker was beaten up like that. But the rest of the Ministry came out. Brood weren't there, of course. They beat him senselessly. Luckily for himself, the Corporation made the save. There was a little standoff there when Triple H decides to blast him. So he was out of the Corporation. Asshole chant intensifies. Shane McMahon had a smile on his face, and the lights go out, and nobody knows what's up. On the final Raw before Backlash, things happened. First of all, the Undertaker demanded the Brood get destroyed. About the match, Shamrock ran in there and whacked Bradshaw with a baseball bat. This meant the Acolytes were going to get it. The Undertaker didn't give a damn if Shamrock interfered, and he attacked them. The rest of the Ministry also. Later on, the Undertaker was discovered talking to Midian on the phone, and once again, he refused to accept failure. Ahead of his match with the Phenom, the Shamrock faced the Big Boss Man. He struggled with a match to get through him, and right after the match, the Undertaker revealed that he had an idea about where Shamrock's sister is, and he teased paying her a visit. Meanwhile, Vince and Stephanie were interviewed on a couple of stuff when somebody gives Vince the news. He's here. Who is it? We don't know. And he sprints to the son of a bitch. And the way Vince was running, you'd think somebody stole his pizza or something. Turns out it was Midian. He gets his ass whooped, manages to quickly take control and storm off into the night. And that was one hell of a segment. Unexpected chaos once again. Vince sprinting will always be iconic. That's one thing to know. The Undertaker, for some reason, wanted some of the Big Show. Unknown as to why that happened, but it did. Now their man budged, and just as Big Show had the advantage, Viscera comes in, and despite this, they couldn't knock him down. Mankind then made the save, and they worked as a tandem duo to get rid of the big guy. Taker, though, he left unscathed, and that was a common occurrence during this time period, during the Ministry. He was always fighting, but once he realizes the guy has too much heart, too much passion, or whatever, is just too tough, he decides, you know what, screw it, let them do it. And so that's the build-up to Ken Shamrock versus The Undertaker at Backlash, that's all. On Heat, The Undertaker and the Ministry caused chaos once again. They assaulted too much, and The Undertaker addressed his match with Ken Shamrock. He promised a horrible tragedy for that night, and he hoped that the Lord has mercy for their souls. What was that tragedy? Well, from the commentary team's perspective, it meant Shamrock was in for a rude awakening. Later in the night, the Ministry destroyed the Brood. They needed Viscera's help, but a W is a W. Afterwards, Taker was talking about how they should prepare for the higher power and how the tragedy begins. And as for the Shamrock match, it's a hit or miss with you. You might appreciate the submission moves, the holds, the MMA style wrestling, and all that, but others felt it wasn't that interesting. Last time around, I thought it was decent, but it was a bit boring at times, and I may have different opinions on it now if I were to watch it. I think many in the arena were expecting a very wild match or something, but it wasn't to be, and Taker was more mat-based during this time, and it was so out there. Like, Taker wasn't exactly pulling out stuff like this during the Attitude Era at all. It was unusual. I do believe if this match happened, say, in 2006, would have been much more appreciated and would have been way better for sure. At times, some were chanting, boring, boring. Yeah, the crowd wasn't really that hot for the match. Anyways, Shamrock did put in the work, but Bradshaw ran in there with a ball bat. Taker took advantage of these distractions, and he was victorious. Afterwards, the Acolyte continued the attack. He totally destroyed the world's most dangerous man. Hell, he even choked him out. But that wasn't even it for the Ministry. At the end of the night, Stephanie McMahon was waiting for her father so they could leave the arena. The Ministry then come out calling for him while the driver leaves, departs the venue. So the car's moving, whatever. Stephanie asks him, wait for my father and whatnot, when he pulls down the window and it's the Undertaker. Where to, Stephanie? That will never get old. This and Buckle Up Teddy were some of the most unintentionally hilarious stuff I've ever seen in my opinion. Vince was unaware of what was going on, and it would become apparent as to why Stephanie was abducted the next night on Raw. He wanted the company. The Undertaker wanted to own the WWF. McMahon arrived to the arena with the signed papers. Patterson suggested he call the cops, but Vince thought that was a bad idea. Shane McMahon, on the other hand, was not really all that worried about his sister, and several minutes later, the phone rings, and it was him. He said that Stephanie's real fine, and he didn't want to waste time. He knew Vince was aware of what he's after, that being the company. The boss assured him that the documents were signed, sealed, and were ready to be delivered. Taker then gives him the location, but the problem with this thing was the fact that he wanted Stone Cold Steve Austin to bring him the documentation. This was a tough pill to swallow for Vince, because for one, he loathes this man. He absolutely hates him with every fiber in his being. Yet he has to call for him, he has to ask for his help, and second, if he doesn't do it, well, he's screwed. So he goes out there and tells Steve that he needs his help. He admitted why he needs help, and Austin didn't understand what in the hell he was saying. So McMahon tells him about Stephanie. She got abducted by the Undertaker and whatnot, but he didn't give a rat's ass about the boss's problems. Vince tried telling him the Undertaker made demands and I have to meet those demands, but Steve reminded him of the past 15 months and how he's endured what was essentially a living hell. And since Vince McMahon needs Stone Cold, by the same token, Stone Cold needs Vince McMahon to kiss his ass. Oh man, he is screwed. Realizing there's no solution, Vince decides to go out and hand him the documentation himself. In other places, the Big Show was trying to get Austin to understand, but he just didn't give a damn. Vince was waiting and waiting and waiting. Austin took notice of this, and JR was wondering, like, what is this leading to? As for McMahon, well, nobody showed, and JR speculated on what this could be about. 2 seconds later, it becomes apparent. They wanted to sacrifice her. So a couple of minutes later, they drag her out on the Undertaker symbol. They brought her out to the ring in order to have something. Nobody knew what it was. They thought it was a sacrifice. The Undertaker said that he wasn't to blame for what's about to happen. It's Vince. He didn't live up to his end of the agreement. And as for Steve Austin, he showed his true colors tonight. Austin chants intensified as Paul Bearer was reading the vows, reciting some passages. I don't even know what the hell this was about. When he reveals it's a wedding. JR's like, a wedding? Not a normal wedding, but a black wedding. Paul was asking her if she accepts Taker and whatnot. When Shamrock tried making a save, he was unsuccessful. He failed miserably. In the back, the corporation were ready to go out there and do something about it, but Shane was like, if it escalates, we'll do something about it. Big Show then comes out, and he actually gets through the minions, but the groom whacks him with a ball bat. Bear then continued where he left off, and he's like, you may now kiss your bride, and the glass shatters, and there he was. Austin stormed in with a clothesline on Mideon, goes toe-to-toe with The Undertaker, stuns Mideon, whacks the entire ministry with a chair, and man, was it beautiful. They bolted, and definitely one of my favorite Stone Cold interruptions. Like, the fans were just waiting for it to happen, and the glass shatters, and it finally did, man. And she shows her appreciation for Austin coming out with a hug. McMahon then comes in, hugs his daughter as Raw went off the air, man. I love that moment. You look at the WWF from January to April of 1999, it was building up to that eventual Austin-Taker battle. They finally collided then and there, and oh man, I loved it. The entire ministry run, Austin was kept away from them. They caused a lot of chaos around the company, But now they got into his business and escalated. I mean, The Undertaker basically called Austin a coward, and he did something about it. Not only that, he felt that saving Stephanie was the right thing to do, regardless of who her father was, because she's not to blame for what went on. So yeah. And that's the Ministry run. I think we all know what happened on Thursday, and I'll eventually dive into that run. I'll think of a way to do it. I don't know. Maybe we'll do it in one whole video. Maybe we'll split it into two. Who knows? But yeah. The Ministry, I thought it was very entertaining. I wasn't bored at all while making this video. I actually enjoyed it. There was some goofy, cheesy-ass stuff. Some people call it B or C movie stuff, but a lot of it was entertaining, I will say that. The Undertaker, he was totally in his element at this point from a character standpoint. He was really focused on getting this thing to work. But I just don't understand why in the hell they're talking about how he's believing in this character and whatnot. It just came off as unnecessary, but hey, whatever. I don't really care about that. Another thing I really liked was the fact that The Undertaker, he wasn't scared of anybody. He was afraid of nobody, and it was really good stuff. They did go overboard a bit, you know. Yeah, it was entertaining. It was some crazy stuff. I do think the Brood, to be honest, this is my opinion. I don't know about yours, but I think the Brood shouldn't have been in the Ministry. Why? Because of the fact that I felt they were good enough on their own. They were over before joining the group. They were over after leaving the group. They should have just remained on their own. They could have feuded with them, and it would have been much better in my eyes. That's what I think. Because when they were in the Brood, they were basically like pigeonholed. They were stuck to a certain level. They couldn't rise above that. The others, you know, it was a great platform, you know, for the acolytes. You know, Farouk wasn't doing anything. It really helped that he was in the group. Bradshaw also, Bradshaw, before this, he was irrelevant. Midian, you know, him also, it really helped. Mabel, Viscera, yeah, it was good for those guys. Yeah, my favorite segment from this run was definitely when the Brood left. I really love that moment. Mick Foley, Mankind comes out, whoops their asses, vampires flying around. Oh man, it was entertaining. Like I said, I will definitely dive into the corporate ministry in the future. I'm still thinking of whether or not to do a corporation video, but I think I'm not because, well, I already covered Austin and Rock's feud, and if I were to do that, I would have to mention that stuff. So yeah, what do you guys think of the ministry? Please comment down below. That's our first video. Make sure you hit a choke slam on the like button and perhaps a tombstone pile driver on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.